Welcome to the Run Republic podcast. Our guest for our very first episode is the inspirational Kevin Weber. Kevin was diagnosed with terminal cancer back in 2014 and given just 2 years to live. Going against all the advice, Kevin kept running, and not only is he still here today, but he's completed some of the toughest ultramarathons in the world and raised a huge amount of money for charity. Kevin has also documented his journey in his brand new book, Dead Man Running. We really hope you enjoyed this inspirational story. So, without further delay, let's get into this week's episode of the Run Republic podcast with Kevin Weber. First of all, Kevin Weber, welcome to the podcast, the very first guest on the Run Republic podcast. So, thanks a million for agreeing to come on and chat to us today. We might start off, and if you can, for those of you who don't, those listening that don't know your story, if you can take us back to that day, I think it was November 2014. I think it's safe to say a day that kind of changed your life forever.
Yeah, sure. Thanks for having me along. So I was just an ordinary kind of regular guy. I had a job, 3 kids, 2 cats, and I ran a bit to stay fit, but not a lot. Probably did a marathon, maybe 2 a year, nothing spectacular. And I was on holiday August 2014, and I started getting up the night for a wee, and it's as simple as that. I kept on getting up right for a wee, and I did what most men don't do. And I went and saw a doctor. I was convinced I was wasting his time. He gave me a blood test and what I now call a doctor's special handshake. And I went back 2 weeks later, still September, and he said, "Oh, I'm really sorry. You've probably got prostate cancer." They look for a score. It's a thing called a PSA score, and every man would have a PSA score, normally like 1 or 2. My dad had curable prostate cancer. He died with it, not of it. At his peak, his score was 12, and on diagnosis, my score was 342. So I wasn't quite off the scale, but I was redlining, if you like.
Yeah.
And that then just started a horrendous process of tears, tests, fear. What do you do? I was 49 years old. My kids were at the time 9, 14 and 16. And I just was thinking, I'm too young to have cancer. And I went through all these tests for 2 months. There's a horrendous biopsy that's involved in prostate cancer testing. And November the 6th, 2014, I'm with my wife, seeing a different doctor I haven't met before. And he's looking at his screen and he's looking at my notes and he says, "Oh, yeah, okay. Yeah, you've got prostate cancer and it's spread to other parts of your body." And prostate cancer is imminently curable as long as you get it early. I think on diagnosis, 82% of men are cured, but I was in the 18% that it was too late, because once it's spread to other parts of your body, then there is no cure for you. And so I remember at the time thinking, well, I'll ask him what my prognosis is, thinking, he's going to say, "Well, don't be silly." And he said, "Oh, 2 years. If you're lucky, 3 to 4. Don't think 10. Don't ever think 10. And of course, at that point in time, my wife and I just burst into tears, because I was expecting to have prostate cancer, but I wasn't expecting to have such a rubbish prognosis. Because I guess at that stage, if he was right, my youngest would start high school without a dad. And kind of, if you're a parent, that's something you absolutely do not want to have to happen. That's not the deal. When you have kids, the idea is that you will help see them through their life until they are able to carry on with things. And of course, with my wife, I didn't marry my wife so I could abandon her when she was in her early 50s. I married my wife because I wanted to stay with her well into retirement. So yeah, horrendous times.
Once you got that kind of 2 year diagnosis, I suppose, was there any one thought that came to your head, or was, as you said, was it just a flood of, you know, what's going to happen? How will I deal with this? Was there any one thought that came to your head? Or was it just completely awash with different thoughts?
I think it's really selfish, but I think it's natural. I spent 2 days just crying and thinking, "Woe is me." I didn't really think beyond anything other than me. It was my cancer, I was dying, and that's it. And then it took only 2 days, and then I started thinking about, actually, it's not about me, it's about my family and my wife and kids, and so I worried about them and cried for them quite a lot. I remember I used to go to bed at night and not want to cry in front of my wife, so I'd wait until she was asleep and then I'd cry in bed. And it kind of was a bit cathartic because you just got used to the fact after a while. I know it sounds strange, but I just got used to the fact that I wouldn't be here. But I still didn't really understand the journey I was on. And so that was November, and on the 13th of January, I started chemotherapy. I had kind of chemotherapy for 3 months, radiotherapy for another few months, a load of drugs. And I remember thinking at the time, he said I might live 2 years, but I've got a year of horrible treatment and then a year of dying. So actually, I haven't got any time at all. My life's kind of already over. He's kind of said to me, I have no time. And that was quite, again, a shock. What do you do when you've got no time? And what goes through your head is, what's the point? I remember thinking, what's the point of anything? What's the point of eating healthily? What's the point of exercise? What's the point of, anything, brushing my teeth? All those, because I'm going to be dead soon. So what's the point? What's the point of knowledge? So I had a brief period where I just didn't care about anything at all, apart from my family, but I didn't care about me or anything that would improve me. And then I started chemotherapy, and the day after my first chemo session, I felt absolutely rubbish. And I got up, looked out the window in the morning. It was January, cold, miserable. I thought, I'm going for a run. I thought, this is it. This is my epiphany, if you like. I have a choice. I could be a victim and wait for other things to happen to me and end up dying and being miserable with it, or I can try and take control of every day when I'm able to and live the best life I can that day and worry about tomorrow. And so I went for a run. I managed like 3 slow miles. Now, the week before I'd run 20 as a training run. By then I was quite fit. I'd done one ultra. I'd run London to Brighton, which is 100k. And so I could run, but slowly. And then I went, and all I could manage was 3 miles. And I got home, I felt sick and shattered, but absolutely elated that I could still, of a fashion, run. Both feet were in the air, so therefore I was running. And that was what changed things for me. Then I thought, well, actually, there is a point, isn't there? Because if I want to run still, that means I need to eat healthily. That means I need to stretch and train and exercise. And I could buy a magazine and read about new kit. And so suddenly I had this short-term goals for everything. I was worried, I thought, well, I'm here today. I'll probably be here next month. So let's just plan for that month and let's live 1 month at a time on a rolling basis. And so I got to about week 4 or 5 of chemo, and I realised I'd entered the Brighton Marathon the year before, and it suddenly occurred to me I'd entered the Brighton Marathon, and it was coming up, and I said to my oncologist, "Hey, I'm in the Brighton Marathon." He said, "No, it's week 13 of chemo. You can't do that because people like your age, with your kind of cancer, with your kind of chemo, don't do marathons." And that was quite a learning point for me, really, because a lot of times in life, not just with cancer, people often tell you people like you don't do stuff. And actually, why are they telling you that? Do they actually know? It wasn't based on fact, you see. It was just based on people like you don't normally do it. Rather than what he could have said was, well, that's unusual. Why don't you give it a go? It was the other way around. It was like, that's unusual. You shouldn't do it. So I trained, and it got, it was tough, but week 13 of chemo came along. I ran the Brighton Marathon. It was my slowest ever marathon at the time. It was 4 hours 36, horrendous. And I remember crossing the finish line, and I'd visualise what it was like, because some days when I was training, I really wasn't feeling the love. I was feeling sick, and I visualised crossing the finish line, and it was just like that. Visualisation actually got me there, because in those tough times, I kept thinking, what would it be like to have the medal around my neck? What would it be like to have my arms in the air to cross the finish line? And it was just like that, and it was amazing. And then I got home, and I was quite impressed with myself, even though I say so myself. And then a friend of mine gave me a call and said, look, I've got you a last-minute place in the London Marathon if you want it in 2 weeks' time. You're running as someone else, which you should never do, by the way, but you're running as someone else. And I thought, you know what, I'll do that. So I ran the London Marathon 2 weeks later, and I did it 12 minutes faster. which is another thing that people often say, you can't run 2 marathons in 2 weeks. Well, actually, I'm an ordinary guy with terminal cancer, and I can run 2 marathons in 2 weeks. And so that kind of kick-started my mentality into what's next.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say it's what you were being told about, can't do this, shouldn't do that. There was no actual basis. There was no, as you said,
No.
if you look up, should I run 2 marathons in 2 weeks? There'll be 100 articles saying no, you definitely shouldn't. It's quite different to can I run 2 marathons in 2 weeks? So when you went back and told your consultants and whatever else that you've just run the marathon, what was their reaction?
Well, he didn't know about the second one. So I remember sitting in front of him and he said, so did you run that marathon then? And I said, well, actually I ran 2. And he kind of fell off his chair metaphorically. And he said, well, okay, what are you going to do next then? And I think he thought I'd be running like park runs. Nothing wrong with park run, by the way, but I thought his head is sort of 5K once a week would be good for you. And I said, well, there's this race I always wanted to run and never got round to it for all sorts of reasons. And he said, what's that? I said, well, it's the Marathon des Sables. And he said, oh, okay, what's that then? And I said, well, marathon Sunday, marathon Monday, marathon Tuesday, double marathon Wednesday, marathon Friday, half marathon Saturday, in rough terms. And he looked at me and said, why would anyone want to do that, let alone someone in your situation? So he laughed and I laughed. And I said, well, it's April 2016. And of course, for me, we were talking now in April 2015. That was a year away. That was a year and a half after I was diagnosed. And in my head, although I'd entered it, I was convinced that I wouldn't be there to do it. I thought I'd either be dead or in a hospice somewhere, unable to do it. But I just thought, if you don't set yourself a goal, you're never going to get there. So, I think often they say in ultra running, better to start and not finish and never start at all. And so I thought, well, I'll start my training. So I went away and I got a coach. I've never had a running coach before. And I found this guy called Rory Coleman, quite famous for, I think he's run about 14, 15 Marathon des Sables and over 1,000 marathons. He's a bit Marmite, he's a good coach insofar as he knows how to get you through that race. But he's quite tough in what he says. But he got me through. I spent a couple of days with him, lots of good advice. And along the way, I did Race to the Stones and Pilgrim's Challenge. So these are sort of 50K, 150K days or 250Ks and maybe 120K. And I thought, well, great, I'm as fit as I'm going to be now. And I remember getting off the plane in Ouarzazate in Morocco and thinking, I don't really care if I finish or not. I never thought I would be here to put my foot in the sand in Morocco. It was never going to happen in November 2014. And that was kind of quite emotional for me. And I remember getting there and starting the race and absolutely loved it. It was tough as hell. It's not an easy race by any stretch of the imagination. But my tent mates were great. There was 8 people. We didn't know each other. We were all very different. And I remember the long day. There's a double marathon day. And I'd never run a double marathon before, especially in the Sahara. And I got about 20 miles in and I had massive blisters on my feet and my shoulders were red raw. My pack was too heavy. You can carry, the minimum weight is 6.5 kilos. I had 11.5 kilo pack plus water. So I was,
You packed the kitchen
absolutely
sink.
struggling. Yeah. And I was on a salt flat and the sun, it was about midday and the sun was bouncing off the salt flat, which was white. So I was cooking from every which way, from above, from below. And I remember stopping and bursting into tears and thought, I just can't do this. And then I kind of remembered, I thought, well, but if I give up now, all those people that sponsored me, they're going to say, oh, Kev, why'd you stop? And I said, well, just because it was a bit hard. Because I wasn't, I hadn't broken a leg. I wasn't dying as such at that moment in time. And I thought, well, I can't be a fraud. And then I thought about all the naysayers, because so many people, like my doctor had sort of said, you can't do that. People like you don't do that sort of thing. You'll fail. I thought, I don't want to give them any ammunition. And then I thought about the people who have got cancer or other challenges, and they were willing me on. I was their champion. They couldn't do it because they were too ill, but they wanted me to do it. I think partly because if I did that, then they might try something themselves, and for themselves, it might only be walking around the block every day. But if Kev could do what he could do, then maybe we could do something as well. So I thought, I can't let them down. Then I thought my kids, and I thought, well, what am I teaching my kids? The going gets tough and you give up? I thought, no, when the going gets tough, you pick yourself up and you keep going. So that was my mission for my kids. And of course, finally, I did want the bling. Everyone wants a Marathon Disciples medal. So I wanted to cross the line and do that. So I kind of literally kicked myself out the backside and just kept on going. And somehow I finished. And I remember finishing the race. I was 660th or something out of 1,200 runners. And so that wasn't bad for an old man who's not particularly good runner with terminal cancer to actually finish like that. But I do remember crossing the line thinking, never, ever again. That race is brutal. I thought, I'm just never, ever going to go back and do anything like this again. And then they have a charter plane. So on the way back on the plane, I'm looking around, there's all these smiling faces on the plane. Everyone's got their medals on still, and that's a bit cheesy, but that's what people do. And I thought, you know what, the race was impossibly hard, but the vibe was out of this world. That tent and the people you met along the way. I met so many great people. I could fill up 8 podcasts just full of the people I met in that first race, all with their own challenges. And I thought, I'd love to go back, but I can't put my wife through it again. One, it cost a load of money. And two, I think, she panicked as much as I did when I was training and all the things going wrong when I was out there. And I got back, and the second thing she said to me was, have you signed up for next year yet then? So I did. And yeah, great race.
So you got the green light to go and do it again. Just interesting to know, when the 2 years passed that you said you were given, how did you feel? Like, was it day by day? You were thinking, okay, I'm I'm a day past 2 years, I'm a week past, I'm a month. What was your mind like?
So I said to you earlier that, on diagnosis, it was woe is me, and then it was woe is my family. And then it was like, woe is anyone with prostate cancer. And then it grew to woe is anyone with any challenge in their life, because if today's the day your partner's left you, or today's the day your car's broken down and you can't get to work, at that moment in time, it is no different to being told you've got terminal cancer, because you think your life is all over. At that moment in time, there's nothing you can do. And I started really caring for people I didn't know who had challenges in their life, no matter what they were. And I really thought that it was almost like I was getting closer to 2 years, and I kept on thinking, I'm just going to suddenly die. I mean, ridiculous. But in your head, when someone says that number, you just fixated on it. Even though the fact
You're
he
living
also
towards
said,
that one day, basically. You're kind of,
yeah, I mean,
it is a little
even though he
like a
did
little
say,
clock.
yeah, he did say I might live 3 to 4 years, but it didn't stop me fixating on the worst thing. And that's what always happens. If people tell you a range of numbers, you'll always go to the worst one. Or if you're really optimistic, the best one. You'll never sit in the middle and go, oh, maybe a bit average. And the day after, or maybe not the day after, maybe the week after, I started thinking, maybe I should stop worrying about dying. Maybe I should just worry about living. And it really was. It took me 2 years to get there. And so I thought, it's about life is now, life is this week, this month. I can do stuff there. You can't change yesterday, it's gone. If you did something bad yesterday, it's happened. Tomorrow might never happen. But today, you can always affect today. And what I mean by that is you can choose if you go for a run after work, and you might go, yeah, but Kev, I'm working till 8. But your trainer's on at 8:15 then. You decide whether you run or whether you go and watch Coronation Street. And why would anyone want to watch Coronation Street, by the way? So, you always have that choice, and you can make every day the best day ever. You might be at work right now and thinking, oh, I'm going to go home. It's Tuesday. I've got spaghetti bolognese. Boring. Don't have spaghetti bolognese then. Have something else. There's so much in your life that is drudge that you can choose to change for the better, and therefore be in control. And when you're in control, even of small things, it makes the bigger things easier to cope with. So, yeah, I think I got past that 2 years, and I just started thinking, right, I'm going to go for it until someone puts the brakes on. And so I started entering loads of races. So I think in 2017, I went back and did the Marathon des Sables again. I did Fire and Ice in Iceland, which is the same format as the Marathon des Sables, only it's in Iceland, so it's a bit colder. And I just kept on, when you meet people on races, they then tell you about other races. Races I'd never heard of. And you suddenly, I didn't know there was a race out there. And so suddenly there was this whole ream of opportunity that I'd never heard of, that now I've heard of and I want to go and do. Along the way, I work for NatWest. As an employer, I've worked for 42 years now. They have been absolutely amazing. They could have easily said to me when I was diagnosed, well, we'll pay your sick pay and then at the end of that, you're out of here. Or they could have made me do the job I always did and I couldn't have done it anymore because I wouldn't have been mentally up to it, and then sacked me off and said, well, you can't do the job you're paid for. But actually what they did was, they said, what do you want to do? The chief exec actually phoned me up and said, what do you want to do? And I explained that I wanted to be more charitable, I wanted to do things for other people, and I wanted to inspire people. I needed a job and I wanted to work for the bank still. And they basically created a job for me where I spend my time motivating people internally or externally to live their best lives and get on with life and worry about what you can do rather than about what you can't. And here I am, 9.5 years later, and by some miracle, I'm still terminal. I have blood tests regularly, and I'm still here. I'm extremely lucky that I'm still here because, I got to know loads of men in my situation when I was diagnosed, and they're all dead apart from one. Some of them only made 6 months. So when the doctor said 2 years, actually that was an average. And some people die in 3 months, 6 months, 2 years, 3 years. The only other person I know that is still alive that I got to know actually runs a lot as well. So, I can't prove to you that running will put back cancer because I clearly got cancer when I ran. But in my straw poll of 2, if you run a lot, then you might keep going a bit longer.
Yeah. Well, if there was a study that came out and said, here are the results, but there you go. You know what I mean? You would believe it. One of the questions I was going to ask is, do you have a particular mantra or quote to motivate yourself to run? But I think you've kind of covered that already. Did you find it even through the first kind of couple of years? Were there even days after you started running and feeling the benefits that you thought, I even don't want to go for a run today?
Okay, so I've got 3 answers to that short question. The first thing is when you get ill, you have a choice in terms of you can just listen to the doctors and do nothing else, or you can go and do your own research and add that to what the doctors tell you. And I did loads and loads of research, and there were some small studies in America of men with prostate cancer, and they basically proved that if you did 20 minutes of vigorous exercise a day, minimum, then it had shrunk all of the tumours in the men who were exercising. So you read that and you think, well, how can I exercise vigorously every day? I can run every day. So I run, at the moment I average about 10k a day. So some days I run, 30k, and some days I might run 5, but I'm always running a minimum of 20 minutes. And I average 10k a day. I run every day. So that was the first thing. I could take control, and I believe that by doing that, I changed my diet a little bit. Less processed food, more fresh food, less meat, more fruit and veg. I didn't smoke anyway. I've actually given up alcohol, so I think that's the right thing to do. I'm not saying that's what you got to do, but in my mind, those were the steps I could take to make myself as strong as possible. And my doctor said to me, the stronger you are, the better your body will be at fighting the cancer every time it has a go. And it's had a go a few times since I was diagnosed. So it means you can tolerate things like chemotherapy better, and you have less side effects, and you come out the other end better, and it works better. They've proved that now. In fact, the doctor that told me that I shouldn't run marathons now says to me, if you were diagnosed today and you already ran marathons, we would tell you to keep on running marathons.
That was
It's
one of my
amazing,
questions, actually. Would they think differently now? Now we're in
So
2024.
Yeah, exercise is really good for you, and they've proved that in all cancers. Apparently, all cancers hate oxygen. So the more oxygen you can pump around your body, the better it is for you. So hence the 20, it all kind of fits in together. The 20 minutes of vigorous exercise a day is pumping loads of oxygen through your body. And I guess in some way that gets to a tumour, and in some way if it doesn't like oxygen, then it kind of bashes it a bit. I can't prove any of this is right. Ultimately, maybe I was always destined to die on the 27th of December 2024. I don't know. But by taking control of what I can do, at least I feel good about it. I'm not worried about the 27th of December 2024 because actually today I feel great and I want to keep on going. And so I do the stuff I do to give myself the best chance. And you asked about mantras. They're not quite mantras, but there were things that one I saw and one I heard that really kicked me up the backside and made me realise that life is now. And the first was I was walking across Trafalgar Square going to work after I'd done my first marathon de Sables. And on the pavement was written in chalk, you only have 2 lives, and the second one starts when you realise you only have one. I had to read it over and over again, and I thought, you know what, for me, that was the moment I went for a run after chemotherapy, because like everyone, I always think I'll do that tomorrow, next week, next month, next year, when I retire. We all think that's natural, isn't it? But sometimes you can't, and I don't mean because you might die. I mean things like, if you had a chance now to go and see Ireland, England at the Six Nations next year, you should say yes, because in 2 years' time, when it happens in Ireland next time, you might not get opportunity to have the tickets. So you say yes to any positive opportunity whenever you can. If you're 23, you should go to Ibiza and wake up after a phone party, in a gutter somewhere drunk, because that's what you should do when you're 23. Because when you're 70, it doesn't work. You should do those things at the right time, at the right age. And so one of those things for me now is like, anything comes along, I always say yes to it. I always say if it's morally legal, if it's morally legal, go and do it and enjoy yourself. Another thing was I was out running with my headphones on. I don't always wear headphones. I tend to wear headphones when I'm running urbanly, around the streets I've known for years. If I go in the countryside, no headphones. And there was an old song, an 80s song by a guy called Julian Lennon, who's John Lennon's son, called Saltwater. There's a bit of a tree hugging song. It's quite nice. And I thought I knew the words, but 2 lines from the end, he sings, "What will I think of me the day that I die?" And again, I had to stop and think, that's it. From this moment on my deathbed, I can have no regrets. I don't want to be there on my deathbed. If that's next week, next month, next year, 10 years' time, I want to only look back with a smile on my face, having done good for other people, having had amazing experiences, enjoyed myself, but never at the expense of someone else. And I want those memories for me and my family and friends. And so that's a really good way to think about things in life. If anything you do, if you think to yourself, what will I think of myself the day that I die? If it's, I'll be proud of that, fill your boots, go and do it. But if it's like, well, I might regret that, actually, that was quite mean, then don't do it. I work for NatWest. We have a thing called the yes check. And one of those yes checks is, will it be right for the bank and the client in 5 years' time? And if the answer's no for either of them, don't do it. If only we had that thought 10 years ago, we might have saved all kinds of problems for the world. But hey, that's where we are now, and that's a great thing to do. And everything in life, shall I wash up or not? I'll leave it to the missus to do. Would you
We
be
could have
pleased you did that?
we
Would you
could
be
have
pleased
used
you did
that
it, won't
bank
you, later?
saying. We could have used that bank saying in Ireland as well about 10, 15 years ago. Um, what do you think running has had the most impact on you physically or mentally, or are they both equal measures?
Both. I mean, physically, yes. I mean, I train every day. I go to the gym 4 times a week. I'm currently training for a couple of races, and they have a bit of, or quite a lot of ascent. So I'm spending, I yesterday I did 200 floors on the Stairmaster machine in the gym. Boring as hell. But, if you want it enough, then you have to train for it. And that's something else I've learned. If you want it, the reason I don't drink is because I wanted to live. I wanted to be lighter. I wanted to run better. So I took a tough choice because I liked, vitamin G or Guinness is one of my favourite drinks. And hey, Guinness Zero is okay. It's not quite the same, but it's there. And I wanted it enough. And so how many times you see people, let's say overweight people, who say, I want to lose weight, whilst they eat another slice of pizza. If you want it enough, you'll find a way. And it has to be your way. I can't tell you what to do. You've got to want it from within, and then you can achieve anything, because it will make you make the right choices. And if you make the right choices, then you'll be the best you could be. I'm never going to win the Barclay Marathons. I'm not. I'm never going to be good enough for that. But I can finish races that I never ever thought I'd even start years ago.
Yeah, one of the one of
Um,
the things one of the things I'm kind of guilty of regularly is looking at people in races and seeing them finish an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours ahead of me, and thinking, why am I not up there? And then it's they're doing the work. They're no different to me and you, apart from they're doing the work that they have to do. You mentioned there about the elevation. If you have an ultra race with 10,000 feet of elevation, there's no point running around your local park. You have to you have to put in the specific work. And um, a quote I love is that success leaves clues. Like you look at successful people in any walks of life, and even in running, the top marathoners in the world, they're putting in 100-mile weeks, 150-mile weeks, and then I'm doing my 2 5Ks on a Tuesday and a Wednesday, wondering why I'm not getting PBs and stuff. So as I said, you have to put in the work.
and I think also realism is important. I meet lots of runners who get disappointed because they're not setting PBs every time they go out. And I think that's a real shame. Not a shame that they're not setting PBs, but a shame that's their attitude. The be all and end all of running for them is whether they can beat last time's time. And that's a bit, with respect, that's a bit sad. To me, they're missing out the joy of running. The joy of running is being, one, alive, number two, being able to run, which I promise you, some people would bite their arm off just to be out there, being able to have both feet in the air and running. So never take that for granted. And then it's running the best you can in the circumstances you've got. So if your life only allows you to train 5K twice a week and 10K once a week, and you take 5 hours for a marathon, then rejoice, because you did the best that your situation allowed. Now, if you want to get better, you might be able to make some choices to increase that time. But then if all you can do is run 3 times a week and not too far, then maybe what else can you do? Change your diet, you can do that. Do things at your desk. I often say to people when they're training, I haven't got much time. Well, why don't you run home from work? Oh, it's too far. Okay, why don't you put your running stuff to work and get off the train 3 stops earlier and just run the last 3 stops? Or park your car outside of town and walk in and jog back afterwards. You won't get bogged down in traffic, but you can always find a way that doesn't cost you lots of time to give you some extra time to exercise. And I'm very, very proud of the fact that I am very efficient with how I do time. And at times it means early mornings. I'm frequently running, 6:37 in the morning, because that's the way I can still fit in all the other stuff I need to fit in my day. And then like tomorrow, I've got a day where I've got nothing happening at all. So tomorrow's a 20-mile day. I've picked my diary around my running diary around what I'm doing. And so it was supposed to be Saturday, but I'm out watching rugby Saturday. So it'll be Friday instead.
Do you think you will be running as much today if your circumstances had been different, if you didn't have that diagnosis back then?
No, I would have. I mean, I did work pretty hard. I was getting the first train to work. I work in London, so I was getting the 6:10 train in the morning, and I was often home on the last train at night, which was just after midnight. And I would probably do that 2 or 3 times a week. I'd bring home work at weekends, so it was a struggle to even run the 1 or 2 marathons a year I was running. And I ran those marathons because I realised I needed to do something within the time constraints I had to try and stay fit. Other than that, I just sit at a desk all day and eat and drink, and that was no good for me. So undeniably, I would not have run what I've run. I mean, I've run, since I was diagnosed, I've run over 15,000 miles. Was that like 25,000k in 9.5 years. This year I'll probably run 3,500k this year alone. So I would never be able to do that if I had a full-time job where I had to actually be at my desk. COVID, for all of its terrible things, one of the plus sides is it enables people to work from home more. And so that, in my case, hour and a half each way travelling I used to do, well, that's 3 hours I can run now. That's fantastic. And lunchtime, you've got a choice lunchtime. You can either watch telly for an hour and sit on your backside, which you did all morning, or you can go out for a run for half an hour. So, COVID, if you look at the positives that came out of it, you can do more stuff.
I have a treadmill at home now in the sitting room, so I have, if I want to watch TV, then I, I have to run. I can run as well. I've absolutely no excuse now that I
Yeah.
have that sitting in the sitting room. Talk to me about your book, Dead Man Running, which I think is an incredible title.
And look at that. I even had a copy here ready. There you go. Oh, those that can see it, Dead Man Running.
It's just such a nice title. I think having the humor in there, given the circumstances and the story, it's just I just love that kind of stuff.
So
how did the book come about?
So I did a podcast for a friend of mine, a guy called Mark Church, who is a BBC cricket commentator, and he played it to his mum, who was like 90 years old, and he said, "Oh, has he got a book? I want to read his book." And I didn't have a book, and so in COVID, he said to me, "Look, there's no cricket going on. Why don't we write your book?" So I spent with him 2 hours twice a week on the phone, where he would ask me questions, and we go through chronologically through my running and cancer journey. And then he'd write it down, and then he'd send it to me, and I'd edit it, and then we'd do the next bit. And then it took about 3-4 months. And I wrote the book, I think, primarily for my kids. And I say that because, my kids were 9, 14, and 16. And when I was going through some pretty rough times when I was first diagnosed in particular, there were days when I felt like rubbish, but I never tried to share that with them. But no doubt I behaved differently. I like to think I was the perfect dad all the time, but I'm sure I wasn't. And they might have also wondered why I would go off running for like 3 hours when I could have been at home with them. But what they didn't realise was that by going off for running for 3 hours and going to these crazy races and having a goal that seemed unattainable but became attainable, kept me going and kept me sane and kept me being the right person that I was most of the time. And so I wrote the book for them. When it first came out, I gave them all a copy. I don't believe any of them have actually read it yet, which is fine. They're now 26, 24 and 19. So,
There's no excuse, really.
Yeah, but I never thought I'd see something, I never thought I'd see stuff. I never thought, one of the things when you get a terminal diagnosis is that it takes away your ability to dream. And I don't mean dream like getting chased around the bedroom by a lump of cheese. I mean, dream like, oh, when I'm older, I'll see this. So I never thought I'd see my daughter finish her A-levels, or go to university or buy her first house. And yet I've seen all those things. I've seen all my kids go through school and get jobs. I've witnessed football matches, rugby matches, holidays with them, stuff that I never ever thought I'd see. And so that's all priceless. Every time something kind of semi-major happens, it's like, I never thought I'd be here for this. And that's not just me being selfish for me, that's also for them, because, I didn't want them to graduate from university and then there's a gap where Dad would have been. Instead, Dad's there. So I'm doing that bit about helping them make the best memories for their life as well, and not creating any sadness, because that's the bit that I hated at first. Was I was convinced I was going to add sadness to their life when I didn't want to do that. So the book's about running, but it's about running because of a challenge. And when I wrote it, I think it's quite well written, thanks to Mark Church. But actually, when I wrote it, I never realised the impact it would have. So now oncologists in hospital are recommending to people when they say, my life's over, I've been given a terminal diagnosis, and they're going, well, you should read this book, because it proves to you, it doesn't guarantee you're going to live for 9.5 years doesn't guarantee you're going to run the MDS 4 times, but it gives you reasons not to give up. And that's the thing. Whatever struggle you've got in life, not just cancer, whatever struggle you've got in life, there's always a way to make it somehow a bit better. And
That was
I,
yeah, that was one of my questions actually come up was what advice would you give to somebody who is struggling with anything in life, no matter kind of how big or small? I suppose you have a different, maybe you're in a better position to understand what they're going through.
yeah, a better position, but I don't know it all. One of my friends, Jeff, he has a charity called Big Moose down in Cardiff, and Big Moose deals with mental health. And I've done some stuff for them, and I did a presentation recently, and I then met a guy who has been helped by the charity, and he started talking about mental health. And I thought I knew, oh yeah, when you've got challenges, just sort of pick yourself up and find something to do and give yourself a little goal. When he was speaking to me, I realised I had no idea what mental health's really about. I know what my mental health's about, and people who are struggling like I might struggle sometimes, I do have a kind of solution, but I didn't understand his world at all. Because he was saying, when things are hopeless, nothing can take you off that course. And I'm very fortunate I'm not in that situation, because I realise when things are hopeless, I find something that I can control, and I do that instead. So it can be really something silly. If you're feeling sad about something, just go and do something that makes you happy, and that might be go and buy an ice cream. It hasn't got to be something wow. Something simple and cheap. Go for a run. Go for a walk. I always say to people, we have so many friends that we've lost touch with. How about one evening, instead of watching TV and watching Love Island or whatever else people watch nowadays, how about go and get your phone and scroll back and find friends who you haven't sent a text to or spoken to for at least a year, and then work backwards. And then just send them a text and say, hi, it's Bob. If your name's Bob, by the way. Don't say if it's not Bob. Hi, it's Bob. Haven't heard from you for ages. Hope you're okay. I've had a great year. I've had a bad year. I've done this or that. Be great to hear back from you. How would you feel if you're the recipient of that text? You say, Bob remembered me. Over a year. Wow. You might feel guilty that you haven't messaged him. But it's like, someone's thought of me. That will absolutely make you feel better. It's like if someone over the phone jumps and says, do you fancy going to the pub tonight? And you're thinking, oh, it's Sunday night. I'm not going to go. It's Sunday night. What does that person think? They might have had a really bad day and chosen you to go to the pub with because they want to share a story with you. They feel that you're a safe environment for them, and you just sacked them off. Just gone, no, I'm a bit tired. So never ever say no to someone. I don't mean never. You should not go to the pub, but you might say, look, I don't really feel it tonight, but I've got 5 minutes now to chat. Or how about we go on Tuesday instead? Give someone that alternative, because you might be the lifeboat that they've been looking for at that moment in time. And even if they're not depressed or sad, just to say to them, I can't do today, but how about Tuesday, means that you're not binning them off and saying they're not worthy of seeing you. So just think about that when people contact you, because you can make a big difference to people's lives, and you can stop people getting depressed before they do get depressed.
Yeah, it's so true. Just there's so much value there in what you just said about really into situations when someone asks you, do you want to do this? Do you want to do that? There could be more to that. You know what I mean? It's not just a
Yeah.
simple. I want to go for a pint of Guinness. Looking ahead, just before we wrap up, Kevin, 2024 for the rest of 2024. What are your big goals? Your big plans? Any crazy ultra marathons?
Okay, so I'm going to go back first before I go forwards. So since I was diagnosed, I've run the Marathon of Doubles 4 times. I've run Fire and Ice in Iceland. I've done the 663 Arctic Ultra twice, finished it once, didn't finish once. Al Andalus in Spain twice, finished once, didn't finish once. I've done global limits races in Cambodia twice, Albania, Bhutan, Sao Tome, where the finish line is the equator, which is a pretty cool finish line. I've run loads of other races, but I've spent so much money, and I've always spent my own money. You know, I raise money for Prostate Cancer UK. I don't raise 10 quid from someone so I can spend it on something I want to do. The downside of that is I've kind of run out of money now because I never thought I'd live this long. So now I have to be more economical with what I'm doing. So I have a race in Arran in Scotland in 2 weeks' time. That's like 100k. And then I'm off to Spain as a race in Burgos. It's called the Way of Legends. It's 200k, but there's 35,000 foot of vert. So hence the Stairmaster, because there's a lot of climb. And then I've got like a WOW race for next year. I'm not going to say yet. And then one WOW race for the year after, because I can only really afford to do one mega race a year now. But that's fine because there's loads of amazing races in the UK to do. And just one other thing that I just want to say, when you think that you can't do stuff and things go wrong, there's always a way of finding a way to do things. So about 2 years ago, I had a double hernia operation, and the doctor said you can't run for 3 months. And you think, if you're like me, you're kind of going to die tomorrow, because that's what I kind of think a lot of the time. And I can't run for 3 months, but running is how I stay sane. You know, we just talked about how I stay alive is through running, the exercise, the mentality of it. And then I said, "Can I walk?" He said, "Yeah, you can walk." I thought, "Great, thanks." So I phoned up my mate John, or Sean as they call him in Ireland, and I said, "John, it's a long way to Tipperary, mate." And he goes, "I'm in." So John and we walked from London to Liverpool, got the ferry to Dublin, and then walked to Tip Town. He thought it meant County Tipperary. I didn't realise it was a County Tipperary. I thought there was only Tipperary, the town. So he thought we were going to stop in Clonmel, but unfortunately for him, another couple of days to keep on going all the way down to Tipperary town. It was fantastic. You know, we did 20 miles a day for 20 odd days. We were powered, at the time I was drinking still, so we were powered by vitamin G. We had the best time ever. We raised loads of money with Prostate Cancer UK and England. But when we got to Ireland, I said, look, it's not right to raise money for Prostate Cancer UK, because one fact in Ireland is the prostate cancer capital of Europe. More men get prostate cancer in Ireland than they do in the rest of Europe. So there's a horrible stat for you. And so we raised money for the Irish Cancer Society. And it was fantastic. I think we raised like €5,000 when we were in Ireland, just with tins and people doing things for us. I got some amazing people helping us, looking after us. At one stage, I met the mayor of Dublin, and the ex-mayor of Dublin was there, and I had these really swollen legs, and I was worried I wouldn't be able to finish it. And the ex-mayor of Dublin got me a fold-up bike to put in the back of our support vehicle, so that if I couldn't walk it, I could cycle. As it ended up, I managed to walk the whole lot. But the welcome we got in Ireland was out of this world. And at one stage, we were walking along a canal out of Dublin, and these three guys were coming towards us, and they looked a bit shady, should we say? And he saw us at the Irish Cancer Society. He said, "So what are you doing?" And we said, "We're walking to Tipperary." He said, "Why?" And we said, "Well, cancer and stuff." And he looked at his mate and said, "Come on, we've got to put some money in the tin." And they all put like notes in the tin and said, "Wish us on our way." And the welcome was just out of this world, just amazing. And I must go back to Ireland again, because I absolutely loved it out there.
I might be a bit biased, but I think Ireland is the best place to run. But having said that, I haven't run anywhere else.
Well, it only rained one day in their 10 days we're in Ireland. How about
Well, you
that?
got lucky.
I know.
You mentioned there about the races being so expensive. If there was hypothetically one race you were guaranteed entry for, money was no object, flights, accommodation, all sorted, anywhere in the world, is there one that you would? Is there Barclay Marathons? Is there Western
Well,
States you'd love to do?
okay. So the Barclay Marathons, I wouldn't even do one lap of the proper one. There's one in the UK, and I did the Barclay Marathons UK last year. I managed 2 laps. I'm going back this year to try and do 3 laps. But the race, if I had the money to do it, I would like to do the Grand to Grand in America. But I haven't, it just costs so much money, and I haven't, I did a race in the Arctic. It cost me 10 grand. I can't keep on doing that sort of thing. That's not affordable anymore. So So I love to do grand to grand, but you know, it's all about being realistic. That's not realistic for me anymore. So it's not. I don't sit there and yearn for it. I kind of, well, what can I do? So I can afford to do the race now, and I can afford to do the race in Spain. It's not that expensive. The flights aren't that expensive, and there are stacks of races in the UK and Ireland that I can do. That aren't that expensive. I can afford a couple €100 here and there. I just can't afford €10,000 to go and do stuff. So yeah, that's the race I like to do. But I think if people said to me there was one race that they should do, if they could only ever do one race, the race I would do would be, it's by a company called Global Limits, and it's in Cambodia. It's just about, I've done it twice. It's the best race ever. It's 220 kilometers. It's generally flat, but there are two massive hills in it. And the people, it's the only place in the world I've ever gone to where the children do this rather than that, as in they wave to you and say hello rather than stick their hand out and want money. They've got absolutely nothing. The country's history is horrendous, but it's the happiest place I've ever been to.
Yeah, I think I actually know the one, and I've seen a lot of people race or stuff on Instagram and social media, people racing and stuff like that. As you said, there's so many incredible races, but again, there's so many incredible races in the UK and Ireland that people can do that are achievable. Kevin, look, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the podcast. I can't thank you enough for coming on and sharing your story. There's so much value there. There's so much positivity to take. Even on the face of it, it's a very hard story to tell. Where's the best place people can find out more about your book, about your
Okay,
challenges,
so
fundraising?
right, okay, the book's available on Amazon, so they discount it massively. So I think it's a tenner, it's a £20 book, and it's £10. So hey, Freddie Boots on Amazon. And it, if you Google me, if you put Kevin Webber prostate cancer just giving, you'll find about 10 pages of me, unfortunately, because I've done quite a lot of stuff, and I'm lucky. That's the thing is, every time I do, I've done a podcast for a while, and every time I do one, I always think, oh, what am I going to say? But actually, I've always done more, and that's the other bit about life: never stand still. There are lots of great people out there who've done great things, but they stop. And when they stop, their story just becomes the guy that used to do stuff. And I don't want that to be me until I can't do stuff anymore. I want to be the guy that's done stuff and is still doing stuff. And that's kind of, this year will be my 10-year anniversary of being told I had 2 years to live. And I'm not going to say what I'm going to do, but I have something mega planned for that week, because it's, and I'm actually really pleased. The doctor I saw that told me, I've never seen him since. And I hope he's still around, because I want to thank him, because him saying what he said motivated me to live my best life. He said, don't think 10 years, don't ever think 10 years. If I can get to those 10 years and I can tell him what I've achieved, spurred on by him, basically telling me that life was now or never. And that's how we should always live. I don't mean gamble your house on today, but I do mean do the best you can today within the resources you've got. A bit for today and a bit for tomorrow. That's how it should work.
Well, I'll be looking forward and keeping an eye on your goals and your races and what secrets you have planned for the 10-year anniversary. Kevin, thanks a million for coming on and chatting to us today, and I wish you all the best for the future.
Thank you very much.
That's all for this week's episode of the Run Republic podcast. We really hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, please leave us a review on whichever platform you are listening on. Thank you for listening, and until next time, keep on running.